House to now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. Mr. David Amess.
My honourable friend, the Minister and the member for South Northamptonshire, we are both members of Parliament and politicians. And as such, we are both under no illusion as to how politicians are regarded. We are blamed when things go wrong, and from time to time we are praised when things go right. And we make no apology for any of that. As members of Parliament, we are paid £67,000.60, and the pay for the Prime Minister is £142,500. Now, some people would say, Madam Deputy Speaker, that that is a lot of money. And it is compared to all sorts of people. But the Minister and I are judged by the electorate. So now it's every 5 years. If they don't like us, they can get rid of us. And if they don't like our party as well, we may pay the price for that. So we are constantly judged. But what I am increasingly angered by is the way public sector governance and executive pay is not working, frankly. And I am sick to death of the relationship between chief executives and the chairman of local authorities. There seems to be in all sectors a very cosy relationship, and I think there is no rigorous scrutiny whatsoever. Now, the late Baroness Thatcher once famously stated, "There is no such thing as public money, there is only taxpayers' money." I wanted this debate because I believe there is, and has been under previous governments, a huge problem with the ease which taxpayers' money is being spent. Whereas there are many extremely hard-working people in the public sector, and I praise all of them, certainly in the health service, in the police, education, they do a fantastic job under difficult circumstances. 31 years on as a Member of Parliament, I wouldn't be making this speech. I now think the management of some public services is frankly not up to scratch, and the salaries paid to the executive directors are in many cases absolutely outrageous and unjustifiable. I have, of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, touched on this in previous debates. Sadly, I'm not sure any action has been taken as a result of what I said. And I've been looking very closely at the way managements of local public services function, and to say I have been unsatisfied with them would be an understatement. And of course you, Madam Deputy Speaker, are a fellow Essex member and proud to be so. So I'm very well aware, Madam Deputy Speaker, that some of these organisations serve your constituency. I raise the issue of my local mental health trust SEPT, my local hospital and probation services on many occasions in this House. Let me repeat once again that I will not let the matter drop about any of those services until I see a satisfactory and a radical change of management. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is not just about Essex and my own constituency of Southend West. This is a nationwide issue. At 48.5% of our GDP, we have one of the highest public spending levels in the world. We spend more on public services in Germany, Japan, Canada, USA, Brazil, Russia, Australia, Switzerland, South Africa or Singapore. And whereas I wholeheartedly support our hard-working medical staff or our wonderful police officers, the taxpayers' money could be managed much more efficiently and fairly. There are many aspects of our public expenditure that need to be addressed. For instance, Madam Deputy Speaker, contributing a net amount of £9.2 billion to the European Union. So when the Prime Minister renegotiates things, I know that will be on the top of his agenda. We subsidise trade unions with a stunning amount of £113 million per annum, and we have 2.6% of total hours lost on sickness leave in the public sector, as opposed to just 1.6% in the private sector. However, I'm going to concentrate more specifically on the problems that should be addressed in terms of public sector governments and the salaries of public sector executives. And I think that when what I have said is reported in Hansard, none of the some of the individuals concerned are not going to like what I'm going to say. My major concern regarding executive pay is not the amount of money directly paid to the directors, but rather how, in many cases, it seems inversely proportional to the quality of service provided. We seem to be rewarding failure. Absolutely, totally unacceptable. I've done some numerical comparisons as my own, and the figures at which I've arrived are shocking. I attempted to compare the ratio of directors' pay to the income from activities at various hospitals. For this reason, I compared my local NHS Foundation Trust Management, which I am very, very unhappy with, and Salford Royal NHS Foundation Trust, which appears to provide exemplary service to patients and has displayed some excellent management. It turns out that Salford Hospital spends only 0.2% of its income from activities on directors' pay, whereas, for instance, SEPT spends 0.5% and Southend Hospital 0.6% of its income from activities on directors' pay. Let me reiterate once again, both SEPT and Southend Hospital have management boards that are not suitable for their roles, and yet they spend twice and 3 times as much respectively on rewarding their directors. This is absolutely unacceptable. I now wish, Madam Deputy Speaker, to provide some examples. The departing Chief Executive of Southend University Hospital Trust, and we don't know whether the individual has gone voluntarily or what has gone on, but we've been saddled with a huge amount of debt, took a pay rise of £20,000 in the last year. And when I challenged the individual on this, because I was told it was £25,000, the individual said, "David, you got it completely wrong. It's a £20,000. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. A £20,000 pay increase. And the deputy took a £15,000 pay increase in the last year. It gets worse, though, Madam Deputy Speaker. The commercial director at Southend University Hospital, who's paid £112,500, took a pay rise of £40,000 from last year, a £40,000 pay increase. The former Deputy Chief Executive, now the Chief Executive of SEPT, is on a salary of £167,500 plus £22,500 employers' pension contribution. I know my honourable friend, the member for Colchester, is also served by the same service. The former Chief Executive of South Essex Partnership University Foundation Trust, which I've addressed the House on many times, received a salary of £217,500. This is crazy. What on earth was the chairman of the board allowing this to happen? But it gets worse. Plus £32,500 employers' pension contribution. Absolutely outrageous. And while all this was going on, the then deputy has now got the chief executive's job. The former executive director of strategy and business development at SEPT, who has a close relationship with the former chief executive, and I believe was hard in contempt of the non-fraternity policy, an issue which I am following up with Monitor, doing a totally unnecessary middle management job with a salary of £147,500 and £22,500 employers' pension contribution. And then the most shocking thing, Madam Deputy Speaker, of all, when this individual left, coincidentally with the Chief Executive, in October 2013, he received an exit package of £470,000. An exit package of £470,000. This is absolutely outrageous, and I'm not going to shut up about this. I'm not going to allow a line to be drawn under this matter because it happened last year. I'm going to keep on about it until those who were responsible for this outrageous abuse of taxpayers' money are called to account. The Executive Chief Finance Officer at SEPT receives a salary of £207,500 £22,500 and £22,500 employers' pension contribution. And it's marvellous that at the Liberal Party conference we've been guaranteed a certain waiting time in terms of mental health appointments and all that. But the reason I get so many complaints about mental health services from my constituencies is because of the appalling mismanagement of SEPT. The Executive Director of Corporate Affairs at SEPT, why you need someone under that title I don't know, another unnecessarily middle management person, receives £132,500 and £17,500 employers' pension contributions. Now that, Madam Deputy Speaker, is more or less the same amount that the Prime Minister gets. And whatever anyone thinks of this Prime Minister or past Prime Ministers, it's the toughest job as far as I'm concerned in the public sector. Now, what is also outrageous, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that the Chief Executive at Essex County Council receives a salary of £210,000 and a total remuneration package of £254,769. This is absolutely ridiculous and totally unacceptable. Over £100,000 more than the Prime Minister. I think this is a matter which Essex County Council should address pretty quickly. Now, the Taxpayers Alliance list of the highest paid council employees ranks Essex in the first place in England with the greatest number of council employees who earn more than £100,000. There are 30 of these employees in Essex. Crazy. This is much more than members of Parliament actually earn, and these same officers may turn up at the House of Commons to brief us on issues, yet they're earning a hell of a lot more than we are. The Director General of the British Broadcasting Corporation, publicly owned, which hasn't frankly had a great record over the past years, is paid £450,000. Absolutely ridiculous. £450,000. Totally unacceptable. Now, I'm not going to name names, Madam Deputy Speaker, but Essex MPs were lobbied today by a number of individuals. And at one of those meetings, I thought it was ridiculous that 3 of these officials turned up. 3! One would have been quite sufficient. And when I asked their salary, one was on £140,000 and the other 2 were on £111,000. Absolutely ridiculous. I've also been in contact with the Royal College of Nursing, who are calling on all NHS senior managers to demonstrate the kind of pay restraint that nursing staff have been forced to accept in recent years. I have myself identified a number of unnecessary jobs in the public sector, such as the overpaid commercial director position at Southend Hospital or the executive director of strategy and business development at SEP. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg, as lots and lots of unnecessary middle management positions are created across the country in the public sector, and the taxpayer is the one who actually pays for this arrogant self-indulgence. Taxpayers Alliance tried to scrutinise public expenditure, and they've identified 1,129 unnecessary jobs in the NHS alone, and that costs £46 million. To take the East of England as an example, according to their report, there are 52 unnecessary public relations jobs in the NHS. I mean, why you have to have all these public relations people, I do not know. If you're doing such a marvellous job, I would have thought the media would cover you in any case, and it's self-evident. I would think it's more like 52 apologists. 4 unnecessary equality jobs, 6 green jobs and 3 other unnecessary jobs. Among other non-jobs in my own constituency, the Taxpayers Alliance lists 2 communications managers and a state and environment manager at SEPT, as well as an equality and diversity manager and head of communications and engagement at Southend Hospital. I'm sure we would agree that equality, diversity and the environment are all very important. However, they should be somehow incorporated in the daily duties of the top management, instead of creating a number of full-time, very well-paid managerial positions to deal specifically with these issues. This is all happening at a time when Southend Hospital's management is facing an £8.5 million deficit. How has this been allowed to happen? Where is the government? Absolutely outrageous. And to make matters worse, Madam Deputy Speaker, Southend Hospital is now hiring an external consultant and has got the nerve to ask hospital staff for ideas on how the hospital should manage its own finances. I mean, this really is taking the mickey, frankly. Governance in the public sector should be addressed. The general guidance provided to the public sector services, for instance, NHS Trust, is that boards of directors have responsibility for the quality of care and for the ongoing financial stability of their organisations. In NHS Foundation trusts such as Southend Hospital or SET, boards of directors are held to account by the Council of Governors, which is elected by the Foundation trust membership of various stakeholders, including local public, patients, carers and staff. The Council of Governors is led by the chairman. Whereas this form of governance appears reasonable in theory, in practice we encounter many problems on the various levels in terms of is it the dog wagging the tail or the other way round. It is simply unbelievable that the chairman of South Essex Partnership Trust remains in position, she's been there since 2008, having allowed a number of scandalous developments, Madam Deputy Speaker, which I've managed to articulate this evening, to take place. Where was the governance there? It was under her leadership that the former chief executive appointed his partner to a very highly paid middle management job, and it was under her leadership that the latter employee left with an exit package of nearly £500,000. And if Monitor are worth anything, I want them to do something about it. How is it possible that the chief executive of the former Essex Probation Service, who is currently Essex CRC, is still in her position? I can remember 10 years ago that the probation service was judged to be failing. She hung on to her job, and now she and the chap who'd been chairman for 2.5 years seem to be setting up another organisation hoping to be one of the successful bidders. I have serious concerns regarding chairman's independence from chief executives, as illustrated by Southend Hospital. Chairman of the Foundation Trust is supposed to overlook the work of executive directors, and in the case that I'm concerned about, the individual seems impotent and unaware of what is happening at his hospital. Indeed, I was there with another Essex colleague who didn't even know who the chairman was, and they were meeting for the first time, and he'd been the chairman of the hospital for 3 years. Problems and irregularities at the top management level are adversely affecting other members of staff. It's affecting morale, and that is what happened as a result of the £20,000 pay rise. And guidance was given that people paid over £100,000 should receive no pay rise at all. At the same time, staff morale seems to be at an all-time low as management fails to retain and motivate the hard-working medical and non-medical staff. It recently hit the headlines that the hospital faces this deficit of £8.5 million, and I think it's unjustifiable to believe that a bulk of this sum is due to the fact that the hospital's management fails to attract and hire permanent staff and instead relies heavily on agency staff. The estimates are that the hospital spent as much as £6.9 million in just 5 months on agency staff. There are a huge number of vacancies at the hospital. This is absolutely ridiculous. What's wrong with the recruitment? So in conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is true that the internal financial crisis at Southend Hospital is serious. I think it could have been avoided. Clear guidance needs to be provided to the public sector managements to both their knowledge and skillful management, as well as their ethical approach to assessing pay. I think external consultants should be looked at very, very carefully. It's outrageous that Southend Hospital has just hired an external consultant to look at its financial problems, despite already having a highly paid director of finance in a full-time position. The services, the external consultant would come with a cost of hundreds of £1,000s to the taxpayer If Southend Hospital needs to resort to external financial advice, then what is the point of having a full-time financial director? So I apologise to my honourable friend, the Minister, to bombard her with all these facts and figures, but she will judge that I'm somewhat frustrated by this, because this is not the first time that I have raised this matter in the House. And I end with what I said at the start. She and I are both politicians. We're blamed for most things, but I think we are badly being let down in terms of the matters that I have mentioned. And I know that I can rely on my honourable friend, the Minister, to do the best that she can to address those problems that I've articulated.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I sincerely congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Southend West, for securing this debate. He clearly feels incredibly passionate about this subject, and I agree with the quote that he gave from Lady Thatcher at the start. And actually, I would add to that the larger the slice taken by government, the smaller the cake available for everyone. And he's quite right to highlight the importance that at a time of austerity, the government needs to be committed to taking as small a slice as we can for ourselves. So as a government, we do, of course, greatly value the very important work that senior managers and executives perform in the public sector. And I'm sure my honourable friend will agree with me when I say that the rewards we give them should reflect the work they do, not least because we need talented individuals in those jobs. However, I have to say I am very sympathetic to his cause. The examples he's given of high pay will lead many, including me, to question the fairness of so many in just one county earning as much or more than our own Prime Minister, who I'm sure nobody in this House or indeed in the country would argue that he doesn't do an extremely demanding job. Yeah. And we do, of course, live in very difficult economic times. There are few households in the country who have not been affected by the financial crisis. Government absolutely cannot be profligate when our citizens are having to make difficult spending decisions themselves. Now, my honourable friend has raised a number of important points. Pay in the public sector and its link to performance, especially in the NHS, the excessive use of middle management jobs and the excessive use of consultants, and I want to address each of these. But before I do that, I'm very aware that my honourable friend has raised a number of issues relating to the South Essex Partnership Trust with Monitor, the regulator for health services in England, and I can assure my honourable friend that I will make sure that what he has said today is passed on to my honourable friend for Central Suffolk and North Ipswich, the Health Minister, for him to also review. This government takes allegations of abuse of the system extremely seriously, so we'll make sure these matters are examined and we will get an answer. Public sector pay restraint is one of the many difficult choices we've had to make to help put the UK's public finances back on track. And of course, we expect senior public sector managers and executives to lead by example. For the senior civil service, pay is set by the government within nationally determined pay scales, following recommendations from the independent review body on senior salaries. So like all public sector workers, senior civil servants have been subject to pay restraint. Their pay was frozen in 2010 to 11, 2011 to 12 and 2012 to 13, and subject to increases of just 1% in 2013 to 14 and 2014 to 15. The number of senior civil service bonuses has also been reduced by 2/3, cutting the cost of the bill by £15 million. For all departments and public bodies where appointments are made by ministers, any salary over the Prime Minister's salary of £142,500 and any bonus arrangement of over £17,500 must be approved by the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. These measures have reduced the number of individuals earning over £150,000 from 372 in 2010 to 243 now, which is a 35% reduction. This has been accompanied by greater transparency as the government has increased public scrutiny of senior salaries. For executive pay in the wider public body, the review body on senior salaries also makes recommendations on the pay of judges, very senior managers in the NHS, senior members of the armed forces and police and crime commissioners. And so I will at this point talk a little more about NHS organisations. This depends on whether they are NHS or foundation trusts. NHS trusts are subject to supervision and performance management by the NHS Trust Development Authority, whose responsibilities include appointing chairmen and non-executive directors, agreeing their remuneration, and influencing decisions on executive pay. Very senior managers in the Department of Health's arm's length bodies received no pay increase in 2014 to 15, and their pay is being frozen next year as well. NHS Foundation Trusts, on the other hand, have greater autonomy over their affairs and are able to make their own board appointments and determine their own pay, but they are expected to take full account of Treasury guidance, as well as the state of the trust and the market pay for the role. As part of its regulatory function, Monitor regularly assesses trusts' governance and financial risk through its own risk assessment framework. So where a foundation trust is, for example, providing poor quality care or failing to meet national waiting time requirements, Monitor is likely to open an investigation into the issues at the trust. Specifically on pay, Monitor doesn't set executive or non-exec pay at a foundation trust. This is the role of the Board Remuneration Committee. However, Monitor does have the powers. If it considers board remuneration is excessive, then the governors could remove the chair and or the non-executive directors responsible for this. Now, I understand that to date, Monitor has yet to take serious action against any individual trust. And I wish to assure my honourable friend that I will be urging the health team to investigate exactly why this is and to get an answer on that point. So let me turn now to excessive use of middle management jobs. Public service is an honourable activity. Whether as a volunteer or a paid public sector employee, it is a high calling. But public service must emphasise at all times the service, not the bureaucracy, and that means emphasising frontline staff and not the officials and the managers. So this government has introduced significant reforms regarding the number of senior staff employed across the public sector and their pay. Since 2010, overall numbers of senior civil servants have reduced by 13%, and the senior civil service pay bill has been reduced by 18.5%. Specifically in the NHS, there are now over 7,400 fewer managers and over 12,500 more clinicians than there were in 2010. I know all members will be glad of that. Savings from administration costs arising from the reforms to the NHS over the period 2010-11 to 2014-15 are expected to free up at least £6.4 billion for extra patient care. We've slashed the amount of money spent on central government consultants from £1.2 billion in 2009 to 10 to £0.3 billion in 2013 to 14. At the same time, we introduced a consultancy controls process which ensures that any spend on a central government consultant that exceeds £20,000 and is for longer than 9 months is approved by the Minister for the Cabinet Office and the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. The amount of money spent on consultants in the NHS has also decreased during this Parliament, from £636.9 million in 2009 to 10 to £584.7 million in 2013 to 14. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are not complacent. I hope I've been able to illustrate to members that we have taken enormous steps to try and improve the fiscal restraint amongst those senior bodies, and we have done what we can. The government has in place effective controls over that executive pay and governance, and I hope that I've assured members that we don't spend taxpayers' money in an excessive or frivolous manner. Through our policies, we are making sure that we are protecting the taxpayers' money, because we will never go back to the bad old days where money is no object.
Yeah.
The question is that the House do now adjourn. As many as that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order! Order!